This is Jay Teaches Reading for All, Lesson 93, in which we'll be looking at two endings, S-U-R-E and T-U-R-E, that are not pronounced like you would think according to their spelling. We will now begin, as usual, with our review. The first review is on contractions, and once again, students, I'm going to say the two words, you say the contraction before I do. They are, there, they will, they'll, they have, they've, it is, it's, is not, isn't, are not, aren't, was not, wasn't, were not, weren't, do not, don't, does not, doesn't, will not, won't, would not, wouldn't, could not, couldn't, should not, shouldn't, has not, hasn't, have not, haven't. Teachers, have the students read these to you now. Lesson 92 is our I-E-R, I-E-S-T endings, which compare two things or more than two things. So we have pretty, prettier, two things being compared, prettiest, more than two things being compared. All right, so students, I gave you that one. Go ahead and do this second line before I do. Roomy, roomier, roomiest. Steady, steadier, steadiest. Dirty, dirtier, dirtiest. Friendly, friendlier, friendliest. Teachers, have students read these to you. Press pause. Now we've got the S-U-R-E and T-U-R-E endings, and I got a lot of lines going on here, so I'm going to use a blocker to help focus. Got too much going on. But we're going to start out with the S-U-R-E endings, and the S-U-R-E endings sometimes sound like sure. And this word is sure, assure, reassure, insure, and reinsure. Now, just to quickly go over the meanings of these words, sure means positive. He was sure this road was the fastest way to town. Positive it was. Assure is guarantee. I can assure you that if you speed through this town, you'll get caught by the police. So it's like a guarantee. It's going to happen. Reassure is to repeat a guarantee. Excuse me. Mom had to reassure the child several times that the doctor would not give her a shot or hurt her in any way. So she had to repeat her promise and reassure her child. Then we've got insure. And insure means to protect or guarantee. He put his matches in a waterproof container to ensure they would not get wet during the canoe trip. So insure, protect, or guarantee. And then reinsure is to protect or guarantee again. He had dropped the insurance policy on his home 3 years ago, but decided to reinsure it this year. In other words, to get insurance on it again. Teachers, I'd like you to have students now read these 5 words to you. Pick one for a spelling test. Press pause. Now we're going to look at a couple words where the sure ending sounds like sure. And this doesn't happen often, but it does happen sometimes, like in pressure and erasure. Pressure means force. Like he covered the wound with a cloth and put pressure on it to stop the bleeding. Okay, so if someone is bleeding, if you're bleeding, you can put a cloth on it and press down hard, and that'll help stop the bleeding. So pressure means a force. And then erasure. Erasure means to wipe off. He covered the wound. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. There was a smudge left on the paper from the erasure of the sentence. And I think most of us know that if we get the wrong kind of eraser, there's going to be a smudge there. And so our erasure is not going to be clean. Okay. Again, teachers first of all, have students say these words and pick out one of them for a spelling test. Press pause. Now, most SURE endings sound like jure, like in measure, pleasure, treasure, exposure, composure, closure, disclosure. And meanings of these words: measure means to find out how many units of, weight, volume, speed, etc. an object has. We were going to measure the distance around the building in units of feet. So find out how many feet the building was around. Pleasure means enjoyment or happiness. He had a great deal of pleasure riding his motorcycle in the mountains. A great deal of enjoyment. Treasure, this means riches, valuing something very highly. He found a treasure buried near the oak tree in his backyard. Wow, I'd like to do that. Exposure, that means open to observation or to forces of nature. The campers suffered exposure to extremely cold weather for 2 days and nights, which means they were open to the forces of nature and probably did a lot of suffering there. Composure means calmness. He was a young quarterback, but showed a lot of composure in his first game. Closure, an ending or a conclusion. He brought the discussion to a closure by saying they would talk about it more at their next meeting. Disclosure. Disclosure means to bring out in the open for all to see and know about. finally the disclosure was made that she would be running for president. So that was brought out in the open and everybody would know about it. All right, teachers, I'd like you to have the students read these to you and pick a couple for the spelling test. Press pause. Now we're going to look at ture endings. Ture endings usually sound like ture, as in mixture, future, rapture, nature, capture, adventure, gesture, moisture, puncture. And meanings for these: mixture means a blending together. She stirred the mixture of eggs, milk, olive oil, butter, and flour. So a blending together of all these. Mixture. Future. Time that will come but hasn't arrived yet. No one knows exactly what the future may bring. Rapture. Being carried away with joy. After living in a cabin all her life and then being taken to an elegant palace, this produced rapture in her spirit. It was so delightful that she was at a loss for words. So rapture means being carried away with joy. Nature, outside environment of planet Earth. So this is the outside. When you walk out of your house, you're going to be walking into the natural, especially if you live by a forest. The family loved going on a nature walk in the lush forest behind their house. Capture, taken by force. The pirates will try to capture any ship they think has little or no defenses and riches. Adventure, it's an exciting or dangerous experience. Climbing a high mountain like one of the Himalayan mountains would be an adventure. Gesture, this is a movement of the body or part of the body to emphasize what is being said. So someone could make a gesture to reinforce what they were saying. Like the waiter made a gesture with his hand for us to follow him, and he was going to seat us. Okay, gesture. Moisture means water causing slight wetness. There was some moisture on the window in the morning after a very humid night. Puncture means to pierce, to make a hole with a sharp point. It looked like the boy was going to puncture the balloon with a large pin. All right, teachers. Now have the students read these to you and pick a couple of them for a spelling test. Press pause. Our next lesson, lesson 94, OUGH endings. And they will surprise you with their pronunciation. And GH combination in itself, as we'll find out in the future, is surprising as well. So, looking forward to seeing you all in lesson 94.